4 decades of business experience. How did you actually get into business?
I got into business because it was the path of least resistance.
What's the sustainable business? Why are you so passionate about building one?
Sustainable business I'm talking about is economically and personally sustainable.
What are the fundamentals he needs to change in the business to take it towards sustainability?
I'll give you the number one reason they fail. They run out of cash.
What are the most common issues of owner dependency businesses?
Learning how to delegate. And if you do that well, you become operationally irrelevant in your business.
Could go back and give a suggestion to 20-year-old yourself. What would that be?
And we had a seminar breakout in our company. Follow your passion is idiotic, in my opinion.
What's going on? What's going on, everybody who's actually listening to this podcast right now? First of all, guys, welcome back to the Nikhil Sai Show, which is hosted by me, the Nikhil Sai. And guess what's going on today? We're having an amazing guest once again on the Nikhil Sai Show. And the guest we have is very unique from the other guests we actually have. And this guy is a true legend. He has over 4 decades of experience in building sustainable businesses. And he is known as the sustainable business coach overall. And we're excited to meet none other than the founder and CEO of the sustainable business, Josh Patrick. Hey, Josh. I'm doing great, Josh. I mean, we love your podcast show where you talk about the cash flow code as well. And we'll definitely get into how to build sustainable businesses. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of businesses, I'm curious, Josh, 4 decades of business experience. How did you actually get into business? Let's talk about your early journey, your early struggles, which made you to get into business in the first place.
I got into business because it was the path of least resistance. I was in college. All I wanted to be a lawyer was pre-law. And then my senior year, I started to actually think about whether I wanted to be a lawyer or not. And I said, no, don't really want to do that because I don't want to defend guilty people. And so I said, what's next? Or what should I do? I was about to graduate. I had a couple of job offers at Boston University where I was going to school, but really didn't want to do that. Looked at the family business. That was the path of least resistance. So I joined my father and we immediately started to fight like cats and dogs. I ended up 2 months later buying a one location operation from him, and we separated. He went his way, I went my way, and I ended up buying his business about 10 years later after that. After making about 152,439 mistakes, and about 7 of them tried to put me out of business.
Wow, that was a sweet intro right there. 100,000 plus mistakes. I mean, that's what it takes. People really don't get it when it comes to building big businesses. It takes a lot of mistakes, and it takes a couple of bankruptcy situations to break through and get to the most success. So, Josh, what's the sustainable business? Why are you so passionate about building one?
Well, sustainable business I'm talking about is economically and personally sustainable, which means it's the business that you love and it provides you with the resources that you need to do 4 things. And the 4 things are live a great life, have an emergency fund, have a fully funded growth program, and have a fully funded retirement program. Because even though you think your business is your retirement plan, it's not. And I can make this very easy. Let's say you have a small business, you draw about $100,000 a year in salary, and your business makes $200,000. You get to 65 years old, you want to sell your business. Well, if I'm making $200,000 a year, I have $200,000, what's called EBITDA, which stands for earnings before interest, depreciation, taxes, and amortization. The value of my business will be approximately $1 million. And if I sell my business for $1 million, do I keep $1 million?
No, you got to pay taxes.
I got to pay taxes. I got to pay fees. I got to have professionals who are going to help me sell the business. So if I'm lucky, I'll only lose 40%. So now I'm left with $600,000. And here I am. I've been making $100,000 a year, and I've got $600,000 left for my business. And if I use the standard 4% spending ratio, which is what many financial planners will tell you is true, that gives you $32,000 a year. Well, if I'm living on $100,000 a year, I've got a problem.
It surely does.
So that's why you need to have a fully funded retirement plan.
Interesting. Wow, that's the four key principles you believe that can make a business sustainable. Now, many businesses are not sustainable for a fact. I would say most businesses are. They are founder led. The founder needs to be hustling 24/7. So, what are the few key steps a business owner needs to take? What are the fundamentals he needs to change in the business to take it towards sustainability? Because I believe sustainability is a pathway, it's not a destination. It's a journey, in my opinion.
Well, the first thing they have to do is to have some way of tracking cash. And they have to have, if you're going to go into business, you need to know what your first 2 or 3 years will look like and whether you'll have enough cash to make
Mm,
it. Well over 50% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. And a lot of people, they'll give you all sorts of reasons they fail. I'll give you the number one reason they fail. They run out of cash.
cash is king.
You run out of cash, you can't play the game anymore. So if you don't have a way of creating cash while you're trying to get your business off the ground, you're likely going to have a problem.
Mm,
And if you don't know how to create new business, you're going to have a problem. So I call that the entrepreneurial stage of a business. And I can promise you, you don't want to be an entrepreneur for very long. Entrepreneurs are concerned with two things: getting enough business in the door and finding a product they can sell.
mm,
One of my favorite quotes is from Michael Gerber. And I'm not a big fan of the E Myth as a book, but I love this quote. And the quote is most people in businesses are technicians who have had an entrepreneurial
mm,
cramp. And that's uh, pretty true in my experience, in the fact that they're technicians, they know how to do what they know how to do, but they don't know how to run a
mm,
business. And if you talk to somebody who's been in business for 10 years and they have 30 or 40 or even 15 employees, and you ask them who they are, they're not going to tell you they're an entrepreneur. They're going to tell you they're a business owner.
yeah. So much difference.
So you don't want to be an entrepreneur. You want to be a business. And here's the difference: a business owner doesn't spend the majority of their time hustling up business or trying to develop a product.
Mm,
They spend the majority of their time running their business. Now, too many of them are working in the business, different conversation altogether, but it's fine to be working in your business while you're building your business. But the truth is, they're business people. They're not spending their time trying to hustle that next, contract, or trying to figure out what they're going to sell their customers. They've already pretty much figured out those two
mm,
things. And once you do that, now you have to become a business
mm.
owner, which means you need to focus on systems.
Makes sense.
You need to learn how to delegate. You need to learn how to hire. You need to learn how to compensate. You need to learn how to do interviews. There's a zillion things that you need to learn how to do, and almost none of them is an entrepreneurial activity.
Wow. Wow. That's eye opening. So basically, everybody who is pretending to be a business owner is living as an entrepreneur, hustling his way through finding products and basically trying to bring in more sales to keep the lights turned off. And they die as an entrepreneur before they even become business owner, really speaking, most of them do. And that's so unfortunate. So I'm curious, in terms of looking at the framework, what are the most common issues of owner dependency businesses when you look at a common business in the blue collar zone?
The 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 almost universal issue that all private business owners
Mm-hmm.
face is learning how to delegate.
Yeah,
Hardest
big one
skill you're ever going to learn is to become a
for
delegate.
sure.
And it gets really hard when you start delegating managers who manage other
Mm,
people. So, in other words, you're not delegating to the frontline worker. That's relatively easy to do. And you're not really delegating. If you're delegating to somebody who's swinging a hammer in your small construction company, you really have a bunch of helpers. You're not delegating. Where you're really delegating is if you have a supervisor who manages those people, and then you're delegating to that supervisor. Now you're learning how to become a business owner.
mm,
Now you're learning the skills you need. The number one skill to make yourself effective is to learn how to delegate.
mm.
And if you do that well, you become operationally irrelevant in your business.
I love that. I mean, can you expand on that, Josh? Like, I think delegation is so important and useful skill, and I'm almost I'm always definitely worried that nobody ever teaches how to delegate correctly. Nobody ever teaches delegation until you actually experience the fires in the business, you don't even know that delegation is a thing. Like I remember myself running a business with 50 people where I don't have an operator in place, and I was the entrepreneur slash operator slash business owner slash salesperson. So I remember that hustle, and I believe it's so painful for entrepreneurs to learn delegation, and I still struggle through it. So I'm excited to learn what are the few steps a business owner or an entrepreneur needs to take to start delegating effectively and actually hold people accountable for the outcome, not just for the work to be done.
I'm a big fan of frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
I find frameworks make it easy for people to remember things. So we have a relatively easy 5-step framework for how to learn how to be a great
Mm-hmm.
delegator. It starts off with EIA. E stands for expect,
Mm-hmm.
I stands for inspect, A stands for accept. So if I'm going to delegate to you, I'm going to set an expectation. I'm going to come back and inspect it, make sure it's done
Mm-hmm.
right, and then I'm going to accept it. But the challenge comes in, especially for new delegators. I'm going to set an expectation, which is probably not going to be very clear. And then I'm going to either come back in 3.5 seconds to inspect what you're doing, and you've never had a chance to do
Mm,
it, or I come back in 3.5 weeks and I inspect what you've done and you haven't done it right and I blow a gasket. And neither one is any good. So I never get around to accepting.
mm,
So the inspect portion is where people get stuck.
mm,
So what you need to do is you need to learn how to inspect and adapt. And that's the next 2 steps. You expect, you inspect, you re-inspect, you adapt, because it's not going to be done right the first time you try to delegate. You go back and you inspect again and you adapt again. You inspect again and you adapt again and you inspect again until it's done properly. And then you
mm,
accept. Now, while you're doing this, while you're going through your inspect and adapt, you're essentially correcting your mistakes that you made when you delegated to
mm,
somebody. Did you give enough instruction? Did you set a parameter? Did you have a way for them to follow through with you when they had
mm.
questions? Did you take the job back over when they couldn't figure out how to do it? Or did you say, no, this is your job. You get to figure it out. I am here to help you. So it's really
Makes
wonderful.
sense. That's a beautiful framework. Any any other framework which you think would be relevant to our audience in terms of hiring or operations specifically?
Yeah, hiring's another thing which is really interesting is that if you listen to most people do job interviews, they are absolutely terrible, especially small businesses. What they end up doing, they end up talking about how wonderful they are, all the great things about their companies, and they forget to ask any questions. And if somebody's a good listener
You hire
and
them.
they have a resume that looks like they've got the technical skills, they fall in love and say, oh, this person's going to be perfect for my company. The challenge
Mm,
is you haven't asked a darn
mm,
question and you haven't asked an open-ended
mm,
question and you're focusing on technical skills to the detriment of not talking about what are your corporate
mm,
values and making sure that person holds your values. And that means you have to have values in the first place, or at least identify values. And most business owners don't do that. And are they willing to do the activities that are necessary for them to be successful in the
mm,
job? For example, you would never want to hire me to be your bookkeeper. And the reason is very simple. I cannot do things in an organized manner. I don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 when I do something. I go one and I say, can I skip 2, 3, 4, and 5 and go right to six? Well, that might be great when you're the CEO of a company, or it might be when you're trying to do a Scrum
mm.
project, but it's not very good if you want to be a
For sure.
bookkeeper. So you wouldn't want me to be your bookkeeper. You would want me to be your
Mm,
CFO. You would want me to be your
mm,
CEO. You would want me to be your chief marketing
mm,
officer. You might want me to be your sales manager. You definitely would want me to be your
mm,
CRO, chief revenue officer, because those are the type of jobs that fit with the skill set I
mm.
have and what I'm willing to do. I can work strategically all day long and not get tired. If you ask me to do something tactically, you're going to tire me out in about a half an hour to 45 minutes, and I'll just stop. So you want to make sure that's the will to. And then there's the values of the
Mm,
company. You know, there are places where you can be a jerk and be very
mm.
successful. Go to Oracle, go to Tesla. I'm sure those are the homes of great jerks. If you, but let's say one of my core values is rights and respect.
Mm,
So if somebody is not going to be respectful customers and their coworkers, they can't work for me. I don't care how good technically they
mm,
are. If I have somebody who doesn't respect others and they're technically very good, I just hired what I call a brilliant jerk. In other words, this is somebody who's really good at their job. They're really good technically. They've checked all the boxes
mm,
technically, and you've come to believe you can't live without
mm,
them, but they're destroying your company. And when you finally get around to firing them, and you
mm.
will, you're going to have a line outside your door saying, gee, what took you so long to get rid of them? And when that used to happen to me, I'd say, gee, there's something below your nose that often moves when sound comes out.
Yeah, you can't really sense your bad breath. Other people could only tell you for sure. So that's really helpful, Josh. I'm curious, as an entrepreneur, especially as a small business owner who's trying to make it happen, make the economics work out. In the pursuit of building this big business and not able to efficiently delegate, not able to efficiently hire, not able to efficiently bring cash coming in, business owners or entrepreneurs get to that stage of burnout. And what do you recommend, or what strategies do you have for small businesses to avoid burnout?
Well, in my experience, burnout happens because the business owner is doing something that they've had to become reasonably good at. They don't have a real good native skill for
Mm,
it. They don't really like
mm,
it, but they don't see any way of getting around it. And they've done this for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're just sick of it. This is why people, I mean, often people will walk into my office, or when I had an office, they would walk in. And I say, gee, what do you want to talk about? They say, I want to sell my business. Say, okay, when do you want to do that? And they would say, yesterday. And as soon as they said that, that I knew we had a problem in that they've been doing the same thing too long and they're tired of it.
mm,
So if I could teach them how to become a good delegator and how to become operationally
mm,
irrelevant, instead of working 60 hours a week, they'd work 20 hours a week and they'd be trying to figure out what they're going to do for that 20 hours because they're not involved in day-to-day operations. And by the way, when you make yourself racially irrelevant, you've also made your business saleable.
mm. That is true.
Because when someone buys your business, I can tell you one thing they don't want.
Owner
They
dependency.
don't want you.
Yeah.
They don't want you. They want your business. They want your cash flow. They want your system sometimes. They may want your intellectual property, but they don't want you.
Yeah.
Or they might think they want you, but very rapidly they're going to find out they don't want you. I mean, I've watched private equity guys buy businesses for years. I've watched private equity guys ruin businesses for years because they haven't been able to figure out that the private business owner they're buying the business from doesn't know how to be an employee.
Mm,
They need to have that person be an employee, and they don't. So if the business owner is operationally irrelevant, whether they become an employee or not doesn't matter to the buyer.
mm. Makes a lot of sense, Josh. That's really helpful. I'm curious, what roles does employee engagement play in building a sustainable business?
Wait, I'm sorry. What does what play?
What what role does employee engagement play in building a sustainable business?
It's a huge part of it. I mean, I ask this question all the time. That's a good question. I ask the question all the time. Who's more important to the success of your business? Your customers or your team members?
I would say team members, because without the team, what do the customers do?
Right. If you don't treat your team members as the very best employees you have or customers you have, what are they going to do?
Leave
They're going to return the favor to your customers, treat them poorly, and your customers will go
for
someplace else.
sure.
So if you want to have long-term loyal customers, you have to treat your team members
Mm,
well.
interesting. And any tips of team engagement overall? Like how do, because I'm one of those business owners, or I believe a lot of entrepreneurs do struggle with this. They are not like they haven't had the skills or the muscle of building teams and managing teams or running teams, or having social interaction with people who actually do the work for them. So I try to avoid most of my team meetings, unless it's very important. So I'm curious, what are the few steps an entrepreneur needs to take to be able to handle the team very well overall at an engagement standpoint and retention standpoint?
Well, if you want your employees engaged, you have to ask them questions.
Hmm.
I mean, it's really pretty simple. One of my favorite process control strategies is something called Scrum. Scrum is how all software is built. And essentially, it's It's based off of lean, which is based off of W.L. Edwards Deming's 14 points, which goes back into the 30s of last century. Excuse me. And at the end of a sprint, which is part of Scrum, it's a 2 or 3 week process where you're going to go and you're going to do a certain amount of things, hopefully deliver some sort of an outcome or product at the end of that
Mm,
period. But at the end of the sprint, there are 3 questions that everybody on that team will answer. One is, what did you love about the work we did over the last couple of
mm,
weeks, over the last sprint? What did you hate about the work we did over the last
mm.
sprint? And what would have to change for the work that you hated become work that you love?
Interesting.
So if you, as a team leader, listen to that and actually help people make life easier for themselves, you're going to have more engaged employees. I mean, after all, in my opinion, the job of a supervisor or a manager is to make life easier for the people who report to them.
Mm, makes sense.
Think about taking your um, organizational chart and turning it upside down.
Wow, that's really
And
insightful.
if you do that, you're going to have engaged employees.
Yeah, I believe that's so key. And the fact that most business owners fumble to ask questions and check up on their employees is probably the root cause of all evil, of disengaged employees and unsatisfied employees. Hence, unsatisfied customers, because employees are the front line for your customers to get in touch with. That's really insightful, Josh. Any tips you have for a small business owner to become a great leader overall? How to influence people? How do you get your team to come and work with you on the same vision you actually have and believe in that and commit their life to it overall?
Learn to be really good at asking questions.
How do you do that? Like if I would want to do something actionable today to be a better question, to be a better asker. I don't know if that's a real word. To be asking the right questions, where do I start?
I'll ask a question. I'm sorry to be so stupid about this, but it's really that simple. You just start asking questions,
Mm,
and what you'll find is the first questions you ask are not very effective.
mm,
And I would try to ask for open-ended questions and not yes or no questions.
mm,
I mean, here's what happens. Somebody makes a mistake in your
mm.
company, and most owners will say, "How could you be so stupid to make that mistake?"
Yeah,
Well, if you instead, what if you would ask, "What did you learn?"
very different frame.
So if you're asking a question, "What did you learn?" What did you expect? If you make a mistake, you learn something from it.
Mm.
Now, a lot of times when you ask your employee or your team member, "What did you learn?" They're gonna look at you and they're gonna say, "I don't know."
Happens sometime.
So when they say, "I don't know," you know what you do then? Then you say, "Well, if you did know, what did you learn?"
Wow.
And then they're gonna say, "I don't know." And so when they say that, then your next thing is said, "Okay, I just want you to make up an answer about what you might have learned from this mistake." And when you force them to do that, they're actually telling you what they really learned.
Mm,
But the truth is, what happens is most business owners will go say, this thing, what caused that mistake, which is a form of what did you learn?
mm.
And the team member will say, I don't know. And the owner will then tell them what they should have learned.
Yeah.
But when you do that, does your team member actually learn anything?
Interesting. So you need to let that come within, not just rub it on their head overall. That's gonna just go over the head if you just tell them that.
You need to force them into answering your question.
That's really interesting for sure. For sure. Oh, yeah, definitely. Let's get to the next part of the interview. Um, Josh, what kind of tools do you use on a day-to-day basis to manage your clients' project and your personal productivity?
The main tool I use is ClickUp.
Wow. Anything else you want to add to the project management software you use the most?
Well, ClickUp is a project management software I
Mm-hmm.
use. I use like a gazillion pieces of software. We use High Level for our integrated marketing platform. I have a variety of stuff I use, of AI tools I use. There's a program called Poe, which is an aggregator of all sorts of different AI tools, and I tend to use that. I do a lot of writing. I've written 2 books. I'm on a 3rd book right
Mm,
now, and I probably write 500 to 1,000 words a day on something or
wow.
other. Sometimes it's just in my journal, but,
Mm,
I like to write a lot. I think it's a good
mm,
activity for me. So I have, obviously Google Suite I use, Gmail and all that kind of good
mm,
junk. I've been using a program I'm playing around with called
mm.
Motion, which by scheduling and calendar and uses some AI tools to put time on the calendar and what you should be doing.
Whoa.
And it's
Too tech savvy.
sort of a method of time blocking. I'm a member of Danny Miracy group. I use them for
Mm,
coaching. So I use a lot of software.
interesting. Are you like tech savvy from the beginning or with the AI and how easy it is to use softwares? Are you getting into this more these days?
I have been tech savvy. My first computer I bought in 1978. It was an Apple
Mm.
II. It cost me, I think, $2,800 or something like that.
Back then.
Uh,
Wow.
and I bought it because of a program called
Mm,
VisiCalc, which was the first spreadsheet program. So it took, but once I finally wrote this 6-page spreadsheet, which analyzed potential food service
mm,
accounts, it went from 3 hours to put together a proposal to 15
mm,
minutes. And from there, we bought a digital PDP 1124, which you've never heard of. Digital was a mini computer company back in the 70s and 80s. um, it was as big as a washing machine. It had literally had 4 disk drives in it. Each one was 5 megabytes. It had 120 kilobit main memory, not megabyte, kilobits main memory, and it cost $57,000.
Whoa.
And that was in 19,
Hmm.
so that'd be like a couple $100,000 today.
Yeah. That was insane.
So the cost of computing has gone down dramatically. We actually had an email system between our 3 branches in 1983 or
Mm,
84, which was set up on a thing called DECnet,
mm,
which was Digital's internal communication
mm.
system. So we had email before email was email and before AOL came around.
Wow.
A lot of my route drivers leave me nasty grams at 3 o'clock in the morning complaining about why they didn't have Snickers.
Love that. Love that, Josh. Josh, like, can you walk us through your typical day? How does your average day look like? When do you wake up? When do you sleep? What do you do in between?
Um, I get up and I pet my dogs. Usually I feed them or my wife feeds
Mm-hmm.
them, make coffee, sit down, drink coffee, and waste about an hour doing that. Sometimes I watch some morning television. Sometimes I
Mm,
read. Sometimes I
mm,
meditate. Sometimes I go back to sleep. And then I go downstairs. I work in my
mm,
basement and I start on whatever my projects are for the
mm,
day. And I go through that. My calendar, if I have appointments to talk or see people, I do
mm,
that, and I've got projects usually going, and I, work on my projects. I say, "Okay, what's the task that's gonna move me towards a key
mm,
result?" I'm a big fan of OKRs for
mm,
planning. OKRs are objectives and key results, and, I take a look and say, "What are the tasks that are gonna move my key results forward?" I say, "How many of these tasks can I do in a day?" And it's not 10, it might be 2 or
mm,
3. And so I'll choose the 2 or 3 that I think will help me the most to get to where I wanna go, and I will do my best to have that
mm.
done.
Makes sense. Love that overall. That's pretty decent. Like, what motivates you every day, like to wake up and get to work and keep pushing and keep achieving the OKRs you're aiming for yourself?
I don't do anything unless I find it interesting.
Mm. Wow, that's a very good way to put it together.
So, I've been doing this for a long time, so, yeah, you could say I'm semi-retired, you could say I'm just not gonna do something unless I find it
Mm.
interesting, which I know I'm not going to, so why pretend?
Mm. Totally with you there. Makes sense.
My goal is not to build a huge business. My goal is to build an interesting business.
Mm. Makes sense. And what factors make you interesting? Like when you look at a task or a project or something you're working for yourself, what is the decision factor for you which makes or breaks the interesting element to you overall? Is it the net positive outcome? Is it the revenue is it going to bring in? Or is it the number of employees you're going to impact? How do you determine that interesting factor?
Whatever I find that's going to actually interest me.
Hmm. So it's a personality thing.
The
It's a
Excuse me?
personality thing. If you are excited to do it emotionally.
Yeah, yeah. If I find if it's something that I'm curious about and or something that I can
Hmm.
learn, I'm likely they're going to be very interested in doing
Hmm.
that. If it's a process I've already figured out how to do and I need to do it over and over
Hmm.
again, I'm going to have an assistant take that over because I'm going to get bored with it really
Hmm.
fast.
Interesting.
If it's something that I can do, like I love to work with people and help them strategically think about their
Hmm.
business. And the more I do that, the happier I
I
am.
love that. Yeah, you're not the tactical repeating task guy, but you're more of the strategist overall who enjoys the.
I can do tactics if I have to. I just don't like to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, gosh, you have read more than 2,000 books at this point. And is that the key source for you to keep learning? And you have great muscle memory, meaning, you have a lot of skill sets and a lot of experience. I'm curious, what was the best source for you to accumulate that information and execute overall?
Well, there's four actually. One is
Mm,
experience. That's the most
mm,
important. And as long as you learn from the experience, it's fine to screw things up. Although it's not fine, it's not fun while you're going through it, but in retrospect, it's usually okay. The second is you want to read, and you can listen to books as well as read or listen to podcasts or whatever you want to do, but you want to consume information somehow. You want to be going through educational programs. You want to find educational programs that will push your skills
mm,
forward. I have a BA in American history that doesn't do a whole lot about teaching you how to run a
yeah.
business or how to be good with
Mm,
people or how to be a leader or any of that
yeah.
stuff. All that stuff I learned on my own
Mm,
afterwards. Um, I started down the idea of getting a master's degree, but I realized rapidly that a master's degree does almost nothing to help you with business, and that includes an MBA, by the
mm,
way. And then the fourth thing is, which I think is really important, is to have a coaching process of some sort in your
mm,
life. It could be a one-on-one coach. It could be a group coaching activity. It could be a small mastermind. And by a mastermind, I mean the mastermind of type of Think and Grow
mm,
Rich, which is a small group that meets on a regular basis. And those are my favorite masterminds. I've had one of those going now pretty much for about 40 years. It's not the same one, but I've had several groups that have been going, and I've been in one for the last 40 years, and they've been extraordinarily helpful to me. So it's a variety of things to answer your
wow.
question. And I go to a lot of live
Mm.
sessions. Online learning is great. Live is better.
Appreciate that, Charles. That's really insightful. Now, if you could go back and give a suggestion to 20-year-old yourself, what would that be?
Be nice.
Were you not nice to your employees or?
I was not nice. I was arguably the worst boss who ever lived when I was 23 years old. I would yell at somebody every day. I would blame somebody else and scream at them if something went wrong, or I would justify why it wasn't my fault.
Mm,
And that didn't build any people who were excited about working with us.
mm.
Now, eventually I learned that wasn't right. And then I made a
What was the
pivot
breaking point?
and
Sorry to cut you off there.
actually went to a seminar. It was one of these new age seminars. And I realized that if you want anything to happen, you have to be personally responsible, which means you have to stop blaming and justifying others.
Mm,
And it was a really good lesson. It took me several years to stop blaming and stop justifying.
mm,
And my newest thing I realized was that I have a habit of speaking in absolutes.
mm,
So just like getting rid of my habit of blaming and justifying, I'm trying to get rid of that
mm,
one. And my first text was I said, well, I'm going to stop using absolutes. And then I realized that I don't even realize when I'm using absolutes. So maybe I should stay as a first step, noticing when I'm using an
Mm,
absolute. And when you notice you're doing something, then you have the opportunity to change it.
mm,
So first I need to notice when I was doing it. And now I need to sit there and actually change the behavior. And when I change that behavior, if I can stop using absolutes, I become much more approachable.
mm. Makes sense. Wow, that's very insightful approach on, I think, changing any behavior pattern in any entrepreneur. That's so helpful. And Josh, I'm curious, again, as entrepreneurs, we always learn from mistakes and we don't consider them as mistakes. But if you could look at one mistake you've made and be like, you could avoid this, I'm sharing the experience, what would that look like?
Um, well, I mean, I already said be nice, but that's, essentially is instead of telling, asking.
Mm. Wow. So you,
I would tell people all the time what was wrong. Instead of doing that, had I asked people,
mm,
it would have been a much better outcome for me.
makes sense.
I mean, it would have been great if I could read a cash flow statement and realize I was running out of cash, even though I was profitable. That would have been a really good thing for me to know how to do, which I didn't know how to do. Almost caused me to go bankrupt. I was technically bankrupt. I managed to talk my way out of it. If I knew how to delegate, that would have been really good because I would try to do too much myself.
Mm,
And all of a sudden, I went from having a part-time employee to 4 employees to 25 employees very rapidly, and I didn't know how to delegate, so I was kind of, always telling people what to do and didn't work with supervisors especially well, never really let people have any real authority. They'd get the responsibility, but I wouldn't ever give them
mm,
authority to actually do anything. They had to run through me all the time. So if I could had stopped doing that, that would have been good.
mm,
And one of the things that business owners think is that you can't let your team members make mistakes. And they say, well, why can't you let them make mistakes? Well, I say, if I let them make mistakes, we'll be out of business.
mm,
Well, if you really think about this, there are two types of mistakes. There are mistakes that are going to put you out of business and mistakes that are not. And how many mistakes can your employees make that would actually put you out of
very
business?
few. Rarely.
Very few. I had one that almost did, but he had to work really hard at it.
Wow. That sounds scary actually, a little bit for sure. So,
It led to the worst 2 weeks of my business
so what
life.
happened? Would you mind sharing? So one of your employees made it worse overall?
Yeah, we had a commissary manager where we made the food for our vending machines and cafeterias. Um, decided he was going to try to save me money and substituted ground turkey for ground beef in some of our recipes. And he didn't handle the ground turkey properly, and turkey has salmonella in it. And we had a salmonella breakout in our company. And normally in a food service company or a food company, if you have a salmonella issue, that's going to put you out of business. It didn't because we had done scenario planning and we knew exactly what we were going to do if we had a foodborne illness that happened. Well, we had it. It was his fault. Had we not handled it properly, it would have put us out of business. That's the only mistake I ever had an employee make that would put me out of business. I had some that were relatively expensive, or $5,000, $10,000
Mm,
mistakes, but that was you know
a big one.
a potential hundreds of $1,000 mistake.
For sure. Yeah, I'm glad you actually had the, process ready to deal with that crisis. And Josh, what do you believe or what do you assume are like your life's biggest achievements? And what's your next goal overall? What are you striving to, do more over?
Well, I don't know, Judd. My purpose in life is to do interesting things with interesting people, and I'm not a big goal fan,
Hmm. Interesting.
and the reason for that is I actually think goals are limiting.
Hmm.
It's nice to have saying, okay, I need to have this, and I want to have that, and I think that's important. And people will tell me, well, those are just goals. Yeah, they are goals, but they're not goals like I wanna have, I wanna 10x my business next year, man, and, that's a stupid goal in my opinion. Anytime I am so sick of people saying, "I'm gonna 10x your business." No, you're gonna 10x my sales and put me out of business because unless you really know how to scale a business, and most people don't, I did more than 10xing my business. And we were technically bankrupt. I was lucky we didn't go out of business.
Yeah.
We went from $75,000 in
Mm,
business to $1.4 million in business in 4
mm.
years.
That's a big
And
jump.
that type of growth was horrible because it was nice to get all the new business in. But the truth was I had no idea how to service it.
Mm,
I didn't know how to be a good delegator. I wasn't a good
mm,
manager. We didn't have systems in place to manage that type of business. We were just
mm,
lucky. Well, all our customers didn't leave us. And Frank, technically, we were making money, but our principal payments far outstripped our appreciation. So we were actually losing
wow.
cash while making money.
Mm,
And that happens when you do that. My question is, or my statement about that is, it's a lot easier to double your profits than 10x your sales. It's even easier to double your profits and double your sales.
mm,
And what's more important? Would you rather have profit or sales? Sales does not mean you're making money. It just means you got sales. My father and I had this ongoing argument for
mm,
years. He was right, I was wrong. And the argument very simply was I would argue that it was more important for us to get sales because when we grew sales, profit would follow.
mm.
And he used to say, "Oh, that was dumb as shit. You, without profits, nothing happens." We were growing our sales and running out of money. So he was right, I was
Mm,
wrong. So if you don't focus on cash and you're in the private business, you're making a huge mistake. When you grow your business rapidly, do you need more employees? Are they trained? Do you need more inventory? Is that paid for? Do you need more equipment? Well, where's the money going to come from that?
mm,
What about buildings? Do you need a bigger building if you have more things or more trucks or whatever, more
mm.
stuff? Those things all cost money and almost none of that shows up as an expense on a profit and loss statement.
Yeah, yeah, Josh. So for somebody to actually avoid this situation, they need to learn, I believe, learn reading the financial statement, the profit loss statements, and have the financial, planning ability, or I would say the skill set. When you are a very good certified, financial planner, you are a chartered financial consultant and whatnot. But I believe not everybody need to increase their skill set to that level. But what do you believe is a resource for somebody to at least get the basics of it so they could read their statements and not go broke?
Well, you should get an outside bookkeeper that knows how to work with small businesses, and they should help you develop a system so you don't have to learn how to read a financial statement, that you understands where your cash is coming from. I have a client who's doing incredibly well. If you asked him to explain a cash flow statement, he wouldn't even know where to start. But he knows how much cash he
Mm,
has. He knows how much cash he produces every
mm.
week. We know where the cash leaks because we have a report on that. And we know where the important things are to focus on to improve the amount of cash he
Mm,
has. I mean, it's nice if you can read a financial
mm.
statement. It's not,
It's not a high value skill set.
I tell people it's not absolutely essential, but it's important.
Mm.
If you go to France, you have to speak French to go to France.
Not really. You could run with English, most likely.
Yeah, you can get away with English now. But if you did speak French, would the trip be more enjoyable?
For sure. That experience would be very
Okay,
different.
well, if you're going to be in business, what's the language of business?
Numbers, definitely.
Right, finance. So if you can read a profit and loss statement and a cash flow statement and a balance sheet and know what to do with the numbers that are on those statements, your trip through business world will be
Mm,
happier, but it's not 100% necessary. There are ways around it.
for sure. I mean, that's a
So
mhm,
again, this is the Michael Gerber thing where you're a technician that's having an entrepreneurial cramp. And most technicians know how to swing a hammer, or they know how to drive a truck,
mm.
or they know how to code software, or they know how to do anything that's technically oriented around a business. But when it comes to running a business, they don't have a clue.
Yeah, for sure. And I would love to know what are the top 3 books you would recommend from thousands of books you actually read for any entrepreneur?
Well, I'm a big fan of the EOS system. We use about 80% of it with our clients. So Traction is a really good book to read.
Mhm,
The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People is a really good book to
mhm,
read. Anything Patrick Lencioni has written is wonderful to read. Could read my books. I think they're pretty good. Let's see, who else would I read for business? Best sales book I've ever read is a book called The Challenger Sale, which I think is an amazing
Mm,
book. Best book on marketing I've ever read is Book Yourself Solid by Michael
mm,
Port. A really interesting, and all of Mike McColowitz's books are really good. They're really
mm.
interesting. Profit First is what he's known for. I don't think that's his best book. I tell him that all the time. I actually think his best book is a book called Fix This
Mm,
Next, which he's taken Maslow's hierarchy and he's adopted it for business. Let's see. I probably could come up with a whole bunch more
wow.
books. Anything by Brene Brown, I think is brilliant. I think she's just a brilliant
Mm,
person. The stuff from the Arbinger Institute is really good about
mm.
leadership. Warren Bennis on leadership is absolutely unbelievable. Dave Logan is very good on organizational development. So is Ishak Adizes. You want me to go
Yeah, for
on?
sure. This is really helpful actually because you're giving books in different dynamics which actually can help actionable way. So I'm glad you're actually giving this away.
If you like process control, Scrum Inc. by Jeff Sutherland is a wonderful book to read. The Goal by Elia
Mm,
Goldratt is another book which is in process control. That's the theory of constraints, and that's written as a parable, which I love. Business novels, Steve Farber stuff, Patrick Lencioni, Goldratt. I even Gino Wickman's written a couple of
mm.
parables. My books both are parables. It's easier for a business owner to consume a story than a
For
how-to
sure.
book.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way. And that's why when I ask questions, I would love to get stories out because stories are more sticky in the brain and, they stay longer and the frameworks, are easy to remember. But just the tactic advice is definitely not something they feel aha for the moment and then it just fades away. So there's not a lot of use in it. So, Josh, if somebody's listening to this podcast and if they want to stay in touch with you, they would want your help in any manner, how could they find you?
Well, you can go to my website, which is
Mm,
www.sustainablebusiness.co. You can send me an email, jpatrick@sustainablebusiness.co. You could look me up on LinkedIn as Ask Josh Patrick on
mm.
LinkedIn. I write 2 posts a week there. I've got a weekly newsletter. You can sign up for my newsletter off my website. I'm cataloging them because I'm going to start a paid newsletter pretty soon. And I've been cataloging all my
Mm.
content, and I've written over 1,400 blog posts, over 1,000
Wow.
newsletters, 430 podcast episodes, and 200 and some odd videos. So I've got lots of content that people can go check out. All that's on my website.
Love that, Josh. That's inspirational and that's motivating to actually see you really trying to put a net positive output in the world and help people to make their business sustainable. And I'm glad you actually jumped on. Any last words for us to conclude the whole show for today?
Um, yeah, I just read a book by what's his first name? Last name's Galloway. He's a professor at NYU, and he was talking about people who follow their passion. And he said, "Don't follow your passion. Here's what you should do: find out what you're really good at, focus on that, and you'll become passionate about it."
Mm, yeah,
Which has been my experience. Follow your passion is idiotic, in my
it is
opinion,
true.
because you could have a passion for something you have no skill at.
Yeah.
I have a passion for music. I have little ability to play music well. So for me to try to become a
Mm,
musician is completely idiotic.
yeah.
I had a passion for playing tennis before my feet gave out on me. Just too slow. I had the shots of a pro
Mm,
or some of them, but I couldn't move. So I was never going to be a great tennis
yeah,
player. I can enjoy, you can be mediocre and enjoy a whole bunch of stuff.
for sure.
You're just not going to make a living
Yeah,
at it.
which is the tricky part. Then you need to find a different way to make the living out of. Otherwise, you can get into tricky
Right.
situation.
But the thing I'm most passionate about is the thing I have the most skill for.
Mm,
I have I have an ability to look at numbers and say, if you focus on that thing, you're going to get a result that will look like
mm.
this. And I can do that in minutes.
Yeah. I trust you on that. I mean, after speaking to you for 55 minutes, it's so clear at what you have at a strategy standpoint, how much strength you could bring to the table. Yeah, passion is such a bullshit metric to actually track. I believe you will feel passionate about doing things which you're actually good at, and you can only get good at something when you do it for a long enough time. So I completely agree with what you said there. Josh, this was definitely one of the best podcasts we've done on business strategy, execution, leadership, and becoming an actual business owner instead of a struggling entrepreneur. Thank you for opening a lot of eyes. And I believe this podcast will reach to thousands of listeners and they will realize few things which they're doing wrong in the business, and appreciate you sharing an amazing stack of books you would recommend. And your expertise and the stories you have shared are invaluable. And I'm so glad to meet you here and appreciate your advice on the whole show today. Thank you so much for your time.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
appreciate you showing up, Josh. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye bye.